This video is brought to you by the good people who support me on Patreon. Thank you so much. I'll shout you all out later. Okay, sorry about the neighbors are blasting the TV next door, so yeah.
And left his loud mouth.
What in English?
Landlords, or, they call them people.
You seriously have no idea what you're talking about. Nah, it's fine. Neither do I. But I can't help but wonder.
A roof over your head, the thing that keeps you sheltered.
A roof over your head. A roof over your head. In a cold winter, summer, autumn, or spring. Just a roof over your head. Our environments are cruel. The natural world is dangerous. Try living out there in the wild. And the artificial hailscapes we created are hostile. Cities have evolved to be places where you're supposed to go from home to work to shopping. Rinse and repeat. You're not supposed to live in the street, and the people who do suffer a horrible hardship nobody should ever go through. Yet, here we are. Many people argue that housing is a human right, and I agree so much. Living out there is rough under any circumstance, and we all need a place to crash, sleep, and keep the little stuff we have, whether it's food, clothes, or any other personal property. We have big cities overflowing with available housing in them, and even, smaller towns are very well equipped to provide for housing necessities. We have the means to keep everybody under a roof right now. Yet more and more people are denied that very basic right. Why? Why?
Capitalism bad. I feel like we've done this before. Have we?
So most people need a place to live, okay? And under capitalism, everything is bought and sold and, becomes a commodity. And that includes the very basic necessities, of course. Not surprised. And building houses is still very expensive. Even more so, in an economy that makes everything into a commodity, right? Construction materials, the wages of workers who actually build the houses, like from the architect to the bricklaying people and everything in between, to paperwork and licensing and whatnot, all of the overhead that keeps adding, and it makes to a very expensive endeavor, right?
The ownership of the land? Who owns the land? Who owns the land?
Why do they own the land? Say you want to build an apartment block. To accomplish that, you need to count with a huge amount of capital, right? You either have that capital to start with, or you borrow it from a bank. Banks. Those holy, No. It gets even worse and worse, right? Such noble institutions. Banks. And of course, in a system in which everything, well, at least not everything yet, but they're surely trying, is not yet a commodity. Yet, you need what people call return on investment, and a big one for that matter. So someone's gotta pay, and those who purchase houses at those expensive prices need a return on investment too. And not everybody's gonna live in those houses, right? I mean, you can live in the first house, you can have a second one for whatever reason, third one starts to be suspicious, but you follow what I'm saying, right? So as they need to return their investment, they pass the burden on to someone else. So there's the solution. Rent the houses, get some profit. And that is unquestioned. That is the way of things. I think they call it capitalist realism. Yeah, like it's easier for most people to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. And that shapes, the common understanding of the world, right? So making profits off the backs of others is common law under this culture. It is legitimate, it is rewarded, it is legal, all the way. In this way, the perspective of having a roof over your head as a human right evaporates. automatically and without a trace. It just evaporates, it just goes away. Profit comes first.
Ka-ching, ka-ching, motherfuckers.
So you have a roof over your head only if you can pay for it. And every intermediary stage, from building, construction, selling, mortgage, letting, subletting, and whatnot, they increase the cost. They add up to the overhead.
So you better work harder, you lazy pro. That is gonna buy another yacht, huh?
Yuck. And that awful caricature, that's normal. That's allowed. That's encouraged. That's capitalism.
Capitalism, baby!
Landlords, lords of land, like the Middle Ages.
Enter the landlord. They own several houses. And I don't want to throw shade on those few who had few houses because inheritance and they're not companies but are actually, regular people that have a house to spare. But they're fucked up too. And that's because they have the same motivation as the big corporations who are actually the big and main problem here. And it's extracting capital, making an extra buck, using something that is meant to be a necessity as a commodity. And it sucks because these small landlords are not as damaging as the big corporations that are actually, the main problem, as I just said. But, because these corporations are problematic. Say predator funds, investment funds, big banks, the usual absolute ghouls that generate misery for millions. They're in this business, and it's not by chance. The thing is, they're generated by our social economic system, the capitalist social economic system. And it's not an accident, it's by design. And these small people, even when they try to be the nicest and best landlords ever to you, they still have power and mechanisms that in a bad day can make a lot of harm. And even so, if they don't use that power, they're still extracting capital from those who are their tenants. And that's not okay. Real estate doesn't produce anything per se. It doesn't do anything by itself. It's just built and it sits there and does nothing. It doesn't create goods or services. It just is. Lays there being bricks, walls, chunks of wood and plastic and glass and whatnot. And that's it. So something that does nothing to actively produce wealth to contribute to their society acts as an extraction tool for their owners, landlords. By the magical grace of social contract, landlords have the right to extract wealth from their tenants. That means a huge portion of your salary is gonna go to someone who is not actually actively doing anything. They're just letting you use their house for a while. As long as you pay, that is. And that's it. They just take it. They sit there and take your salary, big portion of it. What you have left with, you gotta fend for yourself, pay for utilities, pay for food and other necessities you may have in life. If you have a nice salary, that is. Not if you, for whatever reason have to work 3 or 4 jobs, just to get by. On top of that, they have the power to kick you out whenever they want and to control to some extent the ways in that you can personalize that house into your living space. They can let you or not let you modify it. And even in some cases, they control your heat and utilities too. When you're renting, in the bottom of your head, you always know that the place that you live in is not really your home. It's somebody else's house. And you can make it into your home, but it's an act of faith. Materially, it's still somebody else's stuff. And they remind you constantly in the way that you can be evicted, they can raise your rent, and you have absolutely no guarantee whatsoever that you're gonna stay in the same place. If you want to, that is. So by the grace of social magic and common sense bullshit, and of course by the grace of fortune and real estate, landlords have enormous power over their tenants. They know it, and they like it. The worst of this is that nobody questions it really, except for, a few of us, or, I don't know, maybe our numbers are growing a little bit? Maybe?
It is incredibly easy for landlords to use their property with cruelty, with disregard, and of course with greed. They're even rewarded for it. So expect it. So when you have a job and you want a roof over your head, expect a big chunk of your salary to vanish into the hands of your landlord. And that could be a person or a group of people or companies, even multinational corporations or investment funds. Be them whoever they are. They do nothing for society but extracting wealth because they own property. And that's it, your money, gone. Your earned money, your salary, after your employer has extracted their chunk, that is. When it's the case of bigger companies like investment funds or big real estate companies, they organize their whole setup to maximize profit, to maximize efficiency, to extract the more of your salary for their own benefit, no matter what, and of course to spend the least money or resources into maintaining your living space. That is your living space for the time being, if you know what I mean, because they may kick you out. That means they will do whatever it takes to squeeze even your last penny from your hands in the blink of an eye. They really don't care. Corporations, despite of what, some assholes out there say, are not people, and they don't behave like people. They don't behave with the restraint that people show when they see they are doing something unethical for some reason. They have barriers that prevent them from behaving ethically unless somebody takes a step towards it. And nobody is going to, because their objective is to maximize profit. That's their job. It's not to take care of you. It's not to give you something good. It is to rake the profit in. So when you enter a relationship with companies like that, expect them to be the most ruthless landlords and for you to be the most endangered tenant. You are not safe under those circumstances.
Downer. So what can we do instead?
So what can we do instead?
Wait, I just said that, chapter person.
Sorry. It says so in the paper here.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
No problem.
Yeah, it happens.
Everybody needs a place to live. It doesn't have to be fancy, just, dignified enough to be a proper living space. To work, to learn, to live, to exist. What lies in the way for us to achieve this is the concept of private property. And I'm not talking personal property, I'm talking private property. Nobody's coming for your toothbrush. Or are we? It's,
Problematic.
that a group of advantaged people own a large quantity of a first necessity item, right? An item that happens to be limited in space and number. Like in a way, they block the access to it to a majority of other people that are not in that wealthy class. Or that they hold that good hostage to the point that it could be considered tantamount to extortion. Extortion, what a word. But it kind of works, pay me or you're off to the street, I don't care. Is that fair? So how about nobody owns real estate, but we're allowed to use real estate? Let me explain. We can keep the space we use for as long as we use it. We live in an apartment and take care of its maintenance for our own sake. We keep it pretty, well insulated and in good condition so our life quality is equally good. Same with workplaces and any other sorts of facility. Say we move out of town. Then we leave the space free and offer it to other people who may need it. And in our own community, we find another space to live under the same conditions. No need to pay ransom to this or that goon or find that there's an artificial scarcity of living spaces with the only purpose to serve an obscure, parasitic, and antiquated business model.
We can live walking distance from our workplace, spend wages on goods and services and things that we need instead of, paying a parasite. We can improve our quality of life like that, but not just like that, but also by eliminating the existential dread of facing homelessness. We can make sure, in essence, that we have a roof over our heads. It's that simple. But again, a little bit complicated too. Because, of course, setting this in motion would be much more complex than what a dummy like me can tell you, in a YouTube video. It's, there's nuance, there are steps, there are gonna be complications, takes a lot of work, it's gonna be different in many different places, and so on and so on. Another Zizek for the count. So please, do your research, talk to the people around you, search for solutions, take it one step at a time, observe your reality, try to implement whatever steps are needed in your community, in your country, in your region, whatever. But hey, maybe a good start would be to expropriate all of those empty houses and real estate in general, that are right now in the hands of, say, banks or predatory investment funds worldwide, and maybe putting them to good use by starting contracts with homeless people that are contracts of usage, not of property, where they can start living right away so they don't live out in the streets. Let's say, good start.
Maybe a solution for particulars who own 3 or less real estate properties for whatever reason, because family and whatnot, would be to offer them a gradual tax relief for their donation to the public, as a reward or whatever, for each of the extra properties that can be put in this system, right, of common ownership and, rights of usage. So we can gradually put all the real estate into the commons and into this, aforesaid system of usage. That would be held by governmental agencies whose labor is to just, service the advantages for these people in the transition and allocating people into homes and not having to pay and whatnot. And this agency, by the way, should be absolutely accountable, for people that they're not meant to embezzle or do dirty stuff. And at any rate, this doesn't exist in isolation. It would have to exist within a framework in which capitalism is absolutely being dismantled and replaced by a new system of common ownership of the key industries and the means of production and whatnot. So it doesn't exist in a void or something, okay? Also, absolutely accountable in a way that there must be no bourgeois ideologues or technocrats or that kind of bullshit. All that crap that we see in our current
democracy.
Not democracies, nope. And now that we're at it, nationalized industries, key industries like the energy and water and communications and whatnot. Imagine a public ISP that won't charge you to have a cell phone or internet at home. And landlords, well, get a job, I guess. Isn't that what you say to us all the time? Get a job, huh? You get a job, motherfucker. At least, under this new system, you wouldn't have to pay for a mortgage or rent, right? Right? Eh? Pájaro? Eh?
The landlord's here to visit. They're blasting disco down below. Says I'm double the rent cause the building's condemned. Gonna help me buy City Hall. But we can, you know what we can. Oh, we can, and you know we can. Let's lynch the landlord gang. Quite the proposition. I tell him turn on the water. I tell him turn on the heat. Tells me all you ever do is complain. Yeah, then they search the place when I'm not here. But we can, you know what we can. Oh, we can, I'm sure that we can. Let's lynch the landlord gang. Let's Let's lynch the motherfucker. Yeah. Bring the pain, y'all. There's rats chewing up the kitchen. Roaches up to my knees. Turn the oven on, it smells like the hell, yeah. The rain pours through the ceiling, but we can. You know what we can. Oh, we can. You know what we can. Let's lynch the landlord. Let's lynch the landlord. Let's lynch the landlord. Let's lynch the landlord. Yeah.
Hey, it is that part of the video. It is that part of the video. Thank you very much to all the people who supported me on Patreon this month and the month before. It's been quite a ride. It's been busy and not super productive, but it's getting better. So that's good news, I suppose. I want to thank especially the people who donated $10 this month. Catherine Stenson, Jessica Fortney, Neil Surio, and Stefan Bittner. Yes. And yeah. Also my comrades, you know, who support me with another, you know, with different tiers, like, and have been there for forever, like Il Sinistero, Inga Leonora, Chris Lack, Matt Blender, Michael Schmidt, Miguel Medina, Nils Abilgard, Serena Gallagher, Simona Ferlini, the Kinky Beast, and the Ragweed, and newcomer at M, Puffin Bear, and Queer Potters, and Randy Randerson, and Nicole Capricious Nerd. Thank you so much for helping out. And yeah, you know, it'll get better. It'll get better. And yeah, you'll see. If you want to support me on Patreon or Ko-Fi, FIFO, or do like one-time donations, and you know, just help me out. It'll help a lot. I want to really improve, and I want to, you know, make better content available out there, and hopefully, you know, we'll figure this out together. Okay, stay safe. Be awesome. Sending much love. Lot of love. Much love.